The only thing I have a problem with in Expedition 33 so far, the old guy that you meet early on who shows up, he's referred to in battle as white-haired man. On what planet is his hair white? That is not white. It's not even a particularly light gray.
This is how we know it's a JRPG. They're just befuddled by any old person that comes up.
Welcome to the JRPG Pursuit, a podcast about all things JRPGs, from the games we play to the games we collect and everything somewhere in the middle. My name is Abdallah.
I'm Emily.
And I'm Branden. And I'm just gonna leave that voice crack in there for you all.
And Branden
because that's authentically me, apparently.
And today's episode is about Branden hitting puberty.
We all grow at different rates, okay? Quit putting pressure on me societally to finally be a grown man in my 40s.
Oh, anyways. Today's episode, though, not about Branden's puberty moment, but we're going to be talking about some really, fun things across the line of Western versus JRPGs, Japanese RPGs as well. So we're going to get into kind of what we think are the differences between those two from our perspective, as well as, games that we either remember fondly from the origins of each of those areas, or what our favorite games are within those genres, as well as a bunch of other stuff that we'll probably get into and rant about throughout this
Especially
episode.
Some new titles that have just splashed on the scene that I think are very topical.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, do you want to start with something new, or do you want to jump into kind of like a differences first? What do you guys think?
I think new sounds fun, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think
we've all been playing the same game here.
Exactly.
So
we just want to talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Let's get it out of the way, and then we'll kind of reverse back and
rip that Band-Aid off. Yeah, we can reverse engineer its connection to the topic. I feel like it's appropriate anyway. So.
Exactly. And for those who are wondering what we're going to be talking about, it is going to be Expedition 33. Clair Obscur Expedition 33, which just released this last week. And, I mean, everyone should know it because it's been on social media, every YouTube video out there. Everyone's talking about it. It's known as being the Final Fantasy killer at this point, or the better version of Final Fantasy by some of those online, which we'll get into probably at that point. But it's how you guys how's it going? Like, you guys, I know I've been playing it throughout the weekend sporadically, but how you guys liking it so far?
It's been fun. I'm just on Act 2.
Okay.
So I'm about 11, 12 hours in, taking my time with it. And there's just something magical about this game that I think has been really capturing the attention of a lot of people, especially online. So this is a game that I think is very hyped right now, but it kind of lives up to that hype window, in my opinion. How about you guys?
Yeah, and in a way that I can't think of the last time a game had this much hype leading into it and then actually delivered on that. Like, very rarely does that happen in video games in general, JRPGs in particular.
Agreed.
Right. I'm also about 12 hours in. I'm on Act 2, and I think 11 of those hours were yesterday because I've been very busy since release. So yesterday was the first day that I had any time, and I was like, I'm just gonna, and I didn't mean to sit down for 11 hours and play this game. It was not my intention. I was gonna play like 3 hours and then do other things because I have responsibilities. I have a life that I have to live, and I just did nothing but play that game, and it was an accident. So like, that's how good it is. Yeah. It's astonishing.
I'm surprised too.
Yeah.
Like, especially with the combat. I haven't done a lot of Souls-like games, so the whole dodging and parrying thing is something that I don't usually focus on when it comes to, honing my skills when it comes to combat, especially for turn-based games. But there's something just so satisfying about their approach to putting their own spin on the turn-based system and incorporating those elements. I think they've done really well.
I think you hit the nail on the head there with, like, it's kind of like a Souls-like JRPG in a way of, like, it really kind of it punishes you for not playing good or not playing well in this matter. So, like, it's the kind of game that, like, it also gives you the option to turn it down a notch if you want to go down on the easy mode. So there's that aspect. So, like,
there's that. But also, you don't have to necessarily do all the parrying and dodging because there's other tools they give you that you can really tailor your own experience and what you feel most comfortable with. So I feel like there's a lot of creativity that you can kind of engineer it to fit your playstyle.
Yeah. But you will get wrecked if you don't parry or
yes. There are some instances that's unavoidable for sure.
Yeah, there's some bosses or even just normal. I mean, I was talking to Branden about this earlier as we got on chatting about this, and there's some like main just enemies that would just destroy you if you let them. And if you don't if you don't dodge them, and the amount of times they have, like, let's say you're playing against 3 like bad guys, 3 enemies, and they have 3 chances to like stomp you every turn, and their hits can be pretty hard. Even
and there's some that one hit you too.
Exactly. There's plenty of enemies that I fought that were just like 1-hit kills, and I'm like, all right, well, I can't screw up. And so it's very rewarding battle system. Like, you do feel really good about yourself when you pull like a no-hit run and you like stomp on like an enemy and you're parrying and then you're counter attacking at the same time. Yeah. It's just like, it's like a dance almost of like a battle system. It's so good.
Totally. And I think the graphical style, really plays into it too. It just makes it even more satisfying to execute all those.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, the way that the battle system works and how smooth it is and how engaging and fun it is. So this is something that's not really like me, but every time I encounter like an optional boss, every now and then you'll come across an enemy that's like, this is an enemy you can easily avoid. It's guarding some treasure that's probably not worth the effort you're about to put in to kill this thing. Sure. But every time I find one of these things, I grind against that boss until I beat it, because it makes it, I don't know, it makes you feel like it is 100% achievable. You can beat this thing, even if you're not super high level. Like, you can beat this thing if you play well enough. And the act of playing, the actual moment to moment of the combat is fun enough that I'm like, okay, I will do that. I'm willing to die a dozen times against this enemy so that I can beat it and get whatever it is it has, right? Like, that's not me in most games. And the combat here is fun to the level that I'm like happy to do that. Yeah. I'm not getting angry.
And that kind of
goes back to... That's not to take away from the story at all.
Oh, 100%. Right? But like, before we get to the story part, like that kind of really goes into what Emily was saying. It's like Dark Souls feel of a game where like you kind of want to just keep hitting your head against this like enemy or against this boss, optional, even whether it's optional, whatever it is. And you just feel that sense of accomplishment when you finish it. And like the battles happen so quickly too. Like, they're not very long drawn out battles. If you die, you're going to die quickly. And so like, that's the thing. It's like, you can jump back, and they're pretty forgiving about like bringing you back a little bit, like right before you fought them.
Yeah. There's a lot of
they auto-save pretty frequently. Yeah.
Exactly. So like, it's a perfect, like, jump in, get stomped, come back and keep doing it until you figure out the right timings and you just get really good at it. So like, it's just, it's so well done. And it kind of really breathes a fresh air into like JRPGs, I think, that we don't see often enough.
Yeah, I really like the melding of Dark Souls. I hadn't thought about it that way, but you're 100% right, Emily. Like, it is a Dark Souls inspired turn-based system, which I would not have thought you could do. No. How would you do that? Well, this is, I guess, how you do it. Like, they did it.
I think this also speaks to a perfect combination of, the West meets East. When it comes to at least the combat right now. But I think we also want to argue later on how Expedition 33 has a very JRPG feel in the story and characters.
Yeah. And that's like where we can shift into the story part of this, is that, like, let's say, for instance, everybody I've seen it talked about a lot, but like the first hour or the prologue to the game really hooks you in. It's got like they do such a good job of storytelling and like setting the stage of what's to come by
so much mystery and intrigue.
Exactly. And it's like almost like trauma. It gives you this moment of like trauma by the end of the prologue that you're just like, oh my God, like, this is the world that we live in right now. This is the world that they live in. And so like, you almost feel like desperate alongside them in that kind of like, they need to go on this expedition. They need to figure out how they get around this whole thing, because you feel the pain that goes along with it. Yeah. So such a good story.
And also how they tackle grief, I think, has been just masterful. like not just in the prologue, but throughout the story. It's
Yep.
it's been so well done
Yeah.
so far.
Yeah, I don't like. We definitely want to get in no spoiler territory there,
No,
because
no.
everyone's still kind of new to playing this game.
For sure.
But at the same time, like they really kind of even push the boundaries of like each person's psyche in those in the team of like what you thought they were very strong and able to deal with a lot of like really you know terrible situations, obstacles like are pushed to the brink almost, and you start to see like the wavering aspects to all their personalities, and you start to see them become more like what happens when you put these people in these kind of situations, and like
It just makes them human, right?
Exactly, like it gives really like a human aspect to the story, along with all the grief that's happening and all these things and how they're reacting to the grief itself. It's really well done storytelling, I think, from a visual perspective and also from just a story.
Yeah, and it's just all of the details they have in the world and the environments are just really cool. Like when they drop you in initially into the game, which we're actually planning to do a kind of a little let's play for the after show for members only. If you guys are interested in that, and kind of re-experience a little bit of the prologue together.
Yeah.
But there's just something just so magical about this kind of alternative universe with a lot of inspiration from, of course, France. And it's just really pretty how they've engineered everything, really.
Exactly. And that's where I guess we can kind of put it back to like From Software. Like it's kind of got that like aesthetic, that kind of like Bloodborne aesthetic, because it's kind of got almost like a British French. I mean, it's French, but like a French aesthetic to it, which kind
European.
of And so like even the monsters and the things that you fight in the game feel kind of like something you'd see in a FromSoft game.
I want to say they're inspired by some lore or something. Like
probably, yeah.
I don't really know too much about French lore.
Yeah, exactly.
Like folk tales, but I imagine a lot of those have to do with that.
Yeah, but it is really like the way everything is aesthetically is quite like interesting, and the exploration in the game is actually really cool too, because it's not like it's like linear to it's linear, but it also like lets you kind of have a little bit more free reign of like finding little secrets, hidden places here and there, and that's how you find like extra bosses and things like that. So like it's like linear done right, I think, where it kind of keeps you flowing in the right direction but gives you a little bit of room for wiggles.
Yeah. One of the biggest complaints I've heard has been lack of a mini map, which I sometimes feel, especially if I'm not sure if I explored the entire area to the extent I want to.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it did just remind me of a lot of that like classic Final Fantasy, when they on the PS2 or PS3 kind of era where you go down corridors, but expanded in a way.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the minimap piece, I think I know what they were doing with that. And I do agree. Like, I like that there's no minimap in most cases. It is a bit hard. It can be a little hard if you're like trying to figure out where to go, or like if there's other things you can find. But it also keeps the adventureful, I guess, in a way.
Yeah. Like they don't have a map that they're referring to because it's all unknown territory to them. So it just, I guess, gives you a bit more immersion for sure.
Yeah. Anything else you guys want to talk about in terms of?
So how could we say that this is a JRPG? Maybe.
Okay, so I think, and that kind of goes into
today's topic.
But I think there's two aspects to that. I think we talked about Expedition 33. Maybe we should touch a little bit upon another game that released this week that falls on the other side of the coin, and that is Oblivion Remastered. So that is full on what you consider a Western RPG. Have you guys had a lot of experience in the past with Oblivion, or?
Not Oblivion.
I have not. No, I played Skyrim. That was my first and though so far only Elder Scrolls game.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's more or less the same concept.
It is, yeah.
It's just different stories. But the whole gameplay kind of runs about the same. But I played at least a day of it before Expedition 33 came out and took me by storm. But it is a wonderful, it's definitely a different experience when you're playing those kind of games. And that goes into like the difference between them with a JRPG and Western RPG. And I feel like what Expedition 33 does focuses on a set narrative of characters going through a specific story and it kind of takes you down this journey of the story. And that's what I think what JRPGs also focus on from a narrative perspective, whereas like Western RPGs tend to be a bit more fluid. You're kind of building your story as you go. There is an overarching narrative, but you can kind of like pick and choose how you want to get to that point, and gives you a little bit more freedom.
And a bit more customization of who your character is. You get to design them usually and choose like what class they are, and then kind of just go out in the world and find stuff. Whereas, as you mentioned, Expedition 33 is a more crafted experience where you kind of grow with the characters together as they go on their kind of shonen adventure, if you will.
Yeah. Shonen adventure, yes.
When it comes right down to the differentiation between Western and Japanese role-playing games, some people really feel strongly that a Japanese role-playing game is developed by Japanese developers, and that's it. Like, that's what defines it as a Japanese role-playing game.
Yeah.
Which, to me, the ethnicity of the people who wrote the code and composed the music and created the graphics, that's the least interesting and least helpful piece of information you can tell me about it. Like, we don't typically do that with art. We don't say that this art is defined by the ethnicity of the artist.
Yep.
There are other things we look at, right? So for the
culture
term
and like socio-political stuff, like it's not necessarily what their race or ethnicity is.
So for the term to have any usefulness, it can't mean that. It cannot mean that. And if we're going to insist that it does, then I would propose we throw the term JRPG out altogether, because it's worthless.
Yeah.
It's basically essentially meaningless. It
doesn't convey at all what a game's like.
It doesn't tell me anything. There are role-playing games made by Japanese developers in Japan that are so much more like Oblivion than they are like Clair Obscur Expedition 33.
Like From Software, as we mentioned earlier.
Right. So what information am I gleaning from this being a JRPG versus a Western RPG, if that's how we're defining it?
Yeah.
So I to say Clair Obscur is a JRPG, we have to dig a little deeper. We have to understand what it is we're talking about. Yes, it was made in the West. It was made by French developers. That's
ex-Ubisoft people.
Yeah, that's key to, its creation, right? It was made there by those people. Final Fantasy IX was made in America by Japanese and American developers.
Sure.
But we still call it a JRPG because, duh, right? Like, it's Final Fantasy. Yeah. So I don't know. It's a weird argument, and it's always strange to me how much people will dig their heels in on the ethnicity argument when
it's just silly.
Like, I had French toast for breakfast. I'm not in France.
I know, right? Like,
I made it myself.
But whenever you bring up that counter argument, they're like, well, that's apples and oranges. It's like, it's not, though. It's the same thing. It's as close to a perfect analog as you're ever going to find.
Yeah, it just seems silly because, like we talked about, this FromSoft that is a Japanese developer making a Western style RPG. Was that considered a JRPG? Some people consider it a JRPG. Some people consider it a Western RPG. They can make a Western style. I feel like people need to leave the hang up of nationality out of this and kind of think about it as like in the terms of like, what do you know? What are the similarities? What is the qualities? What are the qualities of a JRPG?
It is way more of a vibe check than even a gameplay check.
Exactly.
Right? Like we're saying with Clair Obscur, it incorporates all of these like Souls-esque elements into its combat. But I would not say that it's a Western RPG, despite being made in France.
Exactly.
Because of those gameplay elements, I would say the vibe, the aesthetic, the focus of the story, that's what helps define a JRPG for me. Like, if you're describing a game and you want to convey the most information possible using the least words, like that's a good way to go about it.
Exactly.
I agree. And I don't think we need to get so hung up on how we define things because, definitions are very arbitrary. But I think in this instance, when people really put their, foot down, like this is not a JRPG because the developers aren't from Japan, it just seems really silly to me.
Yeah. And so like,
And we're just whining over definitions that we shouldn't be whining about. We should instead be enjoying these games and the inspiration that these developers took. There's been a lot of interviews, I think, from the devs for Expedition 33 of how they are heavily inspired by Final Fantasy and like this long list of, classic JRPGs. And you could really just see that inspiration, I think, what they made.
Because like you can really feel it in how the story is told. Like it's very heavy handed in terms of symbolism. It's got like a lot of like very, I don't know, fantastical feel to it, where it's like it's like almost like trying to figure out like, it's metaphorical in ways where I feel like Western RPGs are more straightforward in their storytelling.
What you see is what you get.
Exactly. Like it's less about the nuances. It's more about like, this is a story and we're going to tell it. It's like very like a fantasy story. It's like, you're not really trying to dive too deep into a lot of different things. It's very,
they go from point A to point
exactly.
B,
like there's
how they
some sort
go
of
on that
evil.
journey.
Exactly. Like it's very much a very journey like perspective, where like I feel like if you look at like Final Fantasy, like there's a reason why you almost fight God at the end of every Final Fantasy, is like the symbolism of like it's just always like it gets deep into more of like religious, like philosophy and things like that. And so I think there's that tone that comes with JRPGs in general that you start to feel.
You can have metaphorical elements. You can have deeper religious things in Western RPGs.
Yes.
It's not to say that you can't.
No, yeah.
But I think one way that I think about the argument is from the story perspective is who is the author of the story, right? Who is the creative mind of the story primarily? Is it the game developer, the creator of the game, or is it the player? Right? In a Western RPG, you create your character, you are put into a world, you maybe have a grand objective out there that you need to accomplish, but you have so much flexibility and freedom and to experience all of these different smaller stories along the way to achieving the ultimate goal, right? You kind of are the director. You are creating the experience for yourself, and they've created a world in which you are able to do that. And that is very cool. Yeah, I spent so much time in Skyrim just going around and finding stuff and exploring caves. It's very cool. Same with Elden Ring, right?
Yeah.
I spent 100+ hours in Elden Ring just going around and finding stuff and exploring and kind of making my own adventure out of it, right?
Exactly.
For sure.
Clair Obscur or Final Fantasy or any of these other games that we're calling JRPGs, it's not just linearity. It's the fact that you have a predetermined story that is being told, and you are ushered through that story. There's varying degrees of flexibility in terms of openness, but you are basically ushered through the story because the creators, you watch it unfold. The creators have a story they want to tell, and everything is to degrees, right? Like there are JRPGs that I would still argue are technically JRPGs that have a great deal more flexibility and openness to them. And there are JRPGs that are just extremely linear, Final Fantasy X, Final Fantasy 13. That are, people call them hallway simulators or whatever because they're so linear. So there's a variety of experiences, but that's one key element, I think, in helping us understand the difference. Right?
Everything is a spectrum at this point. So like, it just depends on how far or where along the spectrum you are in terms of like how you would categorize between Western and JRPG. It's like, are you leaning heavily on the JRPG side or Western side? But like either way, like I think it's exactly how you want to describe it. I mean,
and because it's on a spectrum, we don't have to necessarily pigeonhole one game as this is only a JRPG, nothing else.
You can pick and choose.
Like we're saying with Clair Obscur, that has From Software vibes and some other kind of things that make it feel Western, but still JRPG maybe in nature.
When you're trying to use one of these terms to explain a game to somebody, you choose the terminology you use based on the information you want to convey about it.
Exactly.
So if you want to emphasize and highlight the aspects of Clair Obscur that are clearly inspired by traditional Japanese role-playing games, calling it a JRPG is an easy way to do that. It's an easy way to convey that info, right?
There's one I guess, series that I do think is commonly thought of as a Western RPG. But as we were kind of talking about, there's like this overall narrative that you kind of see and watch unfold. And I guess the one that comes to mind that maybe deviates a bit from how we were defining it is The Witcher 3.
Yeah.
Because while there are plenty of side stories and things, you still have this predetermined character, Geralt, that you kind of follow along the path, and Cersei too. Ciri, too, as you, make your way through the narrative. And there are, of course, different like romances options, but we have that in JRPGs as well.
Yep.
And there's also, I think, different endings you could have depending on the DLC and stuff. But for the most part, that one kind of also has a somewhat linear determination when it comes to the narrative. But we always, refer to that as a Western RPG.
Yeah, because I feel like it does fall under like the feeling of a Western RPG in terms of like this expansiveness, but it is very much a focused...
The open world, combat and things. Yeah, I agree. Though, like you could also, it's not an RPG, of course, but like Breath of the Wild also kind of has that feel too, right? Though people don't usually think of that as Western.
Yeah,
it's like if we're talking about it being a spectrum, then The Witcher 3 falls a little closer to the middle than something like Clair Obscure would, right? Like, exactly. So you can still make an argument for the various components of the game being JRPG-ish or others being Western RPG-ish, but it falls there on the scale, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think
just on the other end, I would say.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was actually thinking that as we were talking about this, like The Witcher is like an anomaly in this space a little bit because of just how focused the story. It's taken directly from like the Witcher books. And so it's a very focused perspective and focused narrative from that. I mean, there's like all the side stuff is fun and you can do all that stuff, which is great. But like you see that stuff in JRPGs as well. Like Final Fantasy 15, you have like all sorts of little side things that you can do as you're going on this linear journey with your friends. And so it's the same concept in that perspective. And that's considered a JRPG.
I think so. And I feel like if, the Tolkien books were turned into a JRPG or something, people would still maybe think of it like The Witcher, where it's more Western in nature, but
it was turned into
it plays JRPG. Maybe like a JRPG.
What was it? The Lost
PS2,
Age?
It was the Third Age on the PS2.
Third Age, that's right.
Yeah.
Which was, I think they took the battle system from Final Fantasy X.
Yeah, they used basically the command turn, whatever.
Yeah, so
or whatever it was, CTV.
I haven't played that in years, but
I'd almost forgotten about that game. Yeah,
I did too until you just brought it
up. No, but I think Witcher 3 is an interesting kind of perspective from there, and I'm trying to think of like other games that are kind of similar in that vein. I think, I mean, you could even say. Deus Ex is a kind of a similar. I said it right, guys. I'm not.
Was that on the main episode or was that on an after show? No, I can't remember.
I can't. I think it was on the main show.
I think it was on the main show.
Yeah. Only I would make a fool of myself on the main show.
I love that so much. Sorry,
it was so good. Well, this is me not being extremely tired after a weekend of
it's fair. Yeah, you're in a better place.
Yes, my brain, my mental state is much better right now.
Good.
That's kind of the simple concept in terms of like you have this like straightforward narrative that is happening within the game, but then there's also a lot of like side plot that you can do, and it's very Western style, like RPG, and it's also like a first person shooter in a way. So it's got like a mixture of all these different things, and they kind of like pull from different like pieces around them. But I don't know how much more we want to go into like defining.
Yeah, I don't know, but I was thinking on the flip side, are there any conventional JRPGs that maybe are Western RPGs in disguise?
I would
something with maybe multiple endings. I'm not quite sure.
I mean, the first thing that came to mind is a game like maybe Seventh Saga for the Super Nintendo.
Yeah,
that one is really open. Like you have a goal where you have to get these things. And you can kind of go about it however you want. You can choose different characters. Like there's predefined characters, but you choose from a series of them to be your character. And you can encounter the other characters, and sometimes they'll join you, and sometimes you'll have to fight them, depending on the choices you make. So I would say that a game like that would, is considered a JRPG. It's Japanese, right? Would be pretty heavily on the leaning towards the Western side of that scale.
Yeah. I was thinking Final Fantasy 14.
14.
Which
like
has,
MMO?
of course, that MMO flavor, which I feel like MMOs are kind of conventionally Western in nature.
Yeah.
But it's Final Fantasy, right? And it's made in Japan.
Right.
Yeah. Final Fantasy 12, I guess, a little bit, like in terms of like
A little bit.
the aesthetic,
interesting,
like
yeah.
how that's
Maybe
like,
Xenoblade.
yeah, even Xenoblade, it's a little bit. I mean, Xenoblade's like, I'd say Xenoblade Chronicles X maybe more so.
I'd say the level of anime in Xenoblade like just pushes it off the scale towards the Japanese side. It's too late. It doesn't matter what else is in there. It's like, oh my god, the weeb.
I know. Like that's like when you said Xenoblade, I was like, but it's like it is definitely very weeby.
It's Weeb Central. I love it. I love it.
mean, we love it.
I love it because it's Weeb Central. I'm not. I don't want to misconstrue. I don't love it despite it being Weeb Central. That's the reason I love it. Don't misconstrue me.
I think some like tactical RPGs from like the JRPG side of things could be similar to like just tactical games from a Western perspective.
Tactical, like what type of tactical? Not the turn-based, I'm guessing, but maybe more like real time.
Yeah, it could be real time.
Kind of stuff.
There's some turn-based like Western style, I think, too, as well.
Like I guess maybe the combat in 13 Sentinels a little bit. Like
Oh yeah.
I never really felt super Japanese to me, other than the mechs, of course. But
yeah, and I think like anything with like action combat, I think it's generally falls into it feels more aligned to more of Western styles of things.
Yeah, which hello Final Fantasy 16.
Yeah, I mean Final Fantasy 16 feels like a more Western style game in general. Just the way it's like. Yeah. It's like a third person action RPG that like
that was the intent, right?
Yeah. I mean, it comes from like the Yoshi P, who is very much like he likes Western. He likes Western style RPGs, and he brings that kind of like vibe. And they also got the Devil May Cry guy who is Japanese, but he makes a lot of his games are very Western.
Yeah, I don't feel like those are considered super Japanesey. At least me on the outside. I haven't played them.
Yeah, they've got like the humor of Japanese stuff where it's like a little over the top kind of like silliness that comes with
like Bayonetta. Kind of.
Yeah, like it's got that Japanese over the top humor, which is great. I love it. But it's definitely like that is a very specific vibe to it.
Yeah. Interesting.
But I'm trying to think. Like, I don't know if there's that many JRPGs that kind of fall into like the Western. I feel like it's less likely to happen. I think that I've noticed, at least. I can't think of anything. If you guys know, tell us in the comments. The
tropes or storytelling like themes.
Yeah,
I wonder.
It's hard to separate the tropes and the storytelling out of a JRPG. Than it is from a Western RPG.
Yeah.
Like I can look at a Western RPG and see that it has a lot of JRPG elements, but if I'm looking at a JRPG and it's heavy on the story and tropes that I expect, I guess it's harder to see the Western elements shine through.
Japanese
so
like
loud.
Yeah, and like I feel like Japanese developers in general, like if they're making a JRPG, they kind of fall in a little hard. And then when they don't, you get games like Neo or Elden Ring that are more Western RPG adjacent than they are like JRPG. So I feel like they go if they're gonna go Western RPG styled, they usually go almost full.
They go hard.
They go hard on
that
piece. Because I feel like at that point they want to just differentiate themselves from the JRPG like nomenclature, I guess, or the style. That they want to fully like like Yoshi P, like when his interviews, he was very adamant of like that's like a derogatory term now for him.
Right.
Well,
years ago.
I thought that he had said that it was they had viewed it in the earlier days.
Yeah, as like something negative.
I don't know whether he necessarily feels that way now. I hope he doesn't.
I hope not, but like
during the 360 and PS3 era, though, like that was usually considered like a bad game, right? If you called something a JRPG in Western media,
they didn't want to be pigeonholed into like that like style.
Yeah.
or that expectation.
So.
So,
And they tried making all their games brown and gray, just like the Western developers were, and it didn't work out. So
yeah, brown and gray was such a palette.
that was that generation, man. Just everything was brown and gray.
Everything, literally
true.
everything. But as we've talked about, I think JRPGs a lot on this podcast. You know,
We have
I feel like we have. What episode is that? What I think you said like 38 or something.
38, I think.
Yeah,
I think so.
So at least 38. Like double, I say an hour and a half per, or let's say if we did an hour each one, give or take.
About 50 to 60 hours.
Yeah,
I guess.
we've
The
talked
length
about
of a JRPG.
but I feel like it would be good to kind of talk about our experiences with Western RPGs, and then also, you know, which ones we find to be our favorites, or like what was like the first one you remember really playing, or like the first ones you remember. It might be hard to kind of pigeonhole one.
Ones.
Yeah. So, what would you say? I'm going to pick on Branden this time.
The first ones that I really remember. I'm blanking on the name of it. It was a Super Nintendo game.
Super Nintendo. Okay.
It was like first person for like the overworld. And then when you would go into a place, it would be like side view and your characters would kind of move around sort of freely. They made a sequel called Dragon View, but I can't remember the name of the first game. Why am I completely blanking on it?
Let's see. Let me look up Dragon View.
What system was this again?
Super Nintendo.
Super Nintendo. Can't help you there.
Let me see. So
Draken.
Yes.
That was the first one. Draken.
Yes.
Yeah, Draken is pretty. I would say it's pretty Western.
It looks pretty Western. I don't think I've ever played this.
I mean, it's developed in Japan, but we're making the argument, right? So, I would say that was probably the first one chronologically. The first one that I really spent a good amount of time with probably wasn't until Fallout 3. And I think I've told the story on this show before about how I put hundreds of hours into the game and then my save file got corrupted. And I was so glad, like almost tears of joy, happy that I could finally stop playing because I was so addicted to it. That's what happens with me with a really good Western RPG is I will fall into it and it will take me over and I can't get out. So
that's true. That's 100%.
So I don't have a problem with Western RPGs. I don't think that they're bad. I don't think they're inherently lesser. I just don't play them as much because
you like your self-contained stories.
Yeah, I like the self-contained story. I do want to be able to move on to other things. And Fallout 3, New Vegas, Skyrim, you know, that whole kind of cycle of games was where I probably spent the most time in Western. I got Baldur's Gate 3, have not really played it yet. Jen and I are thinking about my wife, Jen, and I are thinking about playing it together. Well, I know you guys know, but like if somebody's listening, they might just think, "Who's Jen? Is it the fourth? Is she here? Is she just quiet?"
It's just like you reference Jen every episode.
Every episode.
Well, yeah, but if somebody's tuning in the first time, you got to consider the newbies.
It's all right.
So so we're thinking about playing it together because you can co-op that game. Yeah, and we play Dungeons and Dragons in real life with friends anyway. Yeah. So. Yeah, it's I don't have as much Western RPG experience, but I have spent a good amount of time with them, I would say.
Yeah. How about you, Emily?
Trying to think of my first ones. It must have been like RuneScape, you know, and I was heavily into like the MMO kind of stuff. I played a bit of WoW too after RuneScape, and those are, I think, also along the same lines, very addicting.
Yeah.
Where you just do mindless things to level up and maybe do some side quests and meander. I didn't do the whole social element of those, but just get as far as possible. And then I sometimes would play with my brother too, which was fun. But I'm trying to think like on consoles though, we didn't talk about this as much, but I would argue Kingdom Hearts in a way has some Western influences because Disney, but it is pretty inherently Japanese with, you know, how they told the story and how they, I guess, did the combat with the menu systems, even though it was action and all that. Yeah. But I think that kind of was one of my first just RPG experiences in general. And that kind of guided me more towards some of the action kind of RPGs that you see more in Western.
Yeah.
I did take a pretty big gap of when I would say a lot of the Western RPGs became more, mainstream, like a lot of the Oblivion kind of games and whatnot. So I didn't really get back into Western RPGs until more recently. Like I played a little bit of Skyrim, but it was more just dabbling. I didn't really get full into it.
Yeah.
But like more recently, I've been playing Avowed and Baldur's Gate 3, The Witcher 3, and I'd love to do more kind of Western storytelling or RPGs, such as like the Mass Effect games, even though they're not necessarily JRPGs, but they have, that Western kind of RPG storytelling.
Yeah.
That also is like a JRPG in a way. But yeah, it's something I want to dabble more in, but I think I haven't touched them as much because of how addicted I was to MMOs when I was younger. And so I've been kind of staying away because they are things that definitely suck you in.
Yeah. No. I guess for me, it started off with probably early PC DOS era, maybe Atari with Adventure. If you guys remember that game, it's kind of like almost Western RPG adjacent, where you're not really like RPG mechanics, but it's like adventure mechanics that later got popularized and
the DNA is there.
The DNA is there.
Not fully evolved yet. Yeah.
But then also like games like Wizardry or Ultima on the DOS systems back in the day, where it was less like open. It was more dungeon crawlery, where it's like a lot more fun, interesting concepts and kind of where a lot of JRPGs started. A lot of Japanese
inspired by games like Wizardry.
Exactly. A lot of the Japanese developers were huge fans of those games, as in the early days of like PC 88 and if you look at a lot of like Falcom, their roots come from playing those games. Like they labeled those as like being very much what they enjoyed. And so I played a lot of those games growing up, Ultima, and then like things like System Shock and Might and Magic and things like that. I got really into those. And then there was like what you consult, I would count the Renaissance era of like Western RPGs, where you get like Fallout 1, 2, Diablo 1 and 2, and even like Daggerfall from I think I think that's the first.
That's the second.
Is that the second
Elder Scrolls game?
Elder Scrolls.
I think the first one was Arena.
Oh yeah. So I think the first one I ever played was Daggerfall back in the day. I don't think I ever beat it, but I remember playing it and liking it. It's like something I would like to go back probably and play it. But I've always been a fan of Western RPGs. Granted, like I play less of them nowadays just because of how much time they just take from you. In general, because they're just kind of like, I'm the kind of person that likes to do everything but the main story.
That's my problem.
That's like always my problem. I'm like, I get so, I don't know if it's like the ADHD brain or something like that, where I'm just like, I'm just going to do all this other stuff.
I don't want to miss this thing because it might be helpful or it might be cool or it might, I can't just leave it.
I just go on these adventuring tangents.
We do that with JRPGs too, don't we? Do all the side quests?
Oh,
I do. Yeah. I'm like trying to get through Expedition 33 relatively quickly because I don't want to get spoiled on anything.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, but I haven't explored every single inch of this place. So maybe I should. I don't have time.
Or beat all the optional bosses.
All the optional bosses, all the side quests. I don't know.
Yeah.
Open more doors. Yeah.
There's a lot to do there. So yeah, I try to stay. The hard thing about Western RPGs is that like with JRPGs, there's like a fixed set of like side content that you can do. And then it kind of forces your hand to keep moving forward until you open up another area that you can find a bunch of new ones. Where Western is just like, all right. Like if you go,
there's a world. If you want to go way over there, you can. You're probably going to get your butt handed to you by some goblins or whatever, but you can go over there if you want.
Exactly. And like and that's the interesting thing, like the thought process of playing a Western RPG kind of shifts. And I'm like, how can I break this? Or how can I do something? How can I do something ridiculous right now?
They don't want me to do this. I want to see if I can.
I feel like with Western RPGs, I'm more likely to think that way of like, I'm going to do something that's like stupid or silly.
Right. I think it's because, and I'm glad you brought that up. I think it's because with the JRPG, it's so much more of a curated experience. I want to go on that journey that they've set out for me. I don't want to break it. I don't want to mess it up. With a Western RPG, they're like, here's this playground, go crazy. Exactly. And I'm like, I will show you how crazy I can go. I'm going to go the craziest.
For sure.
And that's just like a completely different mindset.
I do think JRPGs, though, they do limit the scale of how much you can deviate from the path. So I think that's just inherently how the formula is.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So like that's the thought process there.
Speed runs of JRPGs are very interesting to me. I like watching them because they feel like deviant. Like, you're not supposed to do that. You just glitched. You glitched through something. You're not supposed. How'd you skip that cutscene? You're not supposed to do that. That's bad. Don't do that. I don't know. It's fun to watch.
That's funny. But I don't know. I feel like there's something about Western RPGs that could be sometimes intimidating to start because of maybe the scope or how long the game could be if you wanted to do everything. But also, I think just having that responsibility of designing your character. Because I feel like when you are in a JRPG, the level up system is very simple. The more you grind, usually the higher your stats are. And you don't always have to manipulate like where your stat points go and things like that. Yeah. All you need to do is worry about maybe generating money to equip the best weapons, and then you could beat the boss. Yep. Mm-hmm. Whereas in the Western sense, you have to think more of, okay, do I want this character to be more powerful in this aspect? And how do I balance my party? There's a lot more thinking when it comes to, I think, designing your character, not just at the start, but as you progress through the game, which I find more intimidating sometimes.
It's very it's the D&D roots basically coming from Western RPGs is that like you really are building a character. You're building like their whole like, and a lot of games also lets you like pick what their backstory is and how they're going. How does that backstory affect the narrative in general or how you play the game? You get a lot of that with Oblivion, and just the Elder Scroll games gives you a lot of that ability to choose. Where did they come from? What was their upbringing? And the same thing with like Mass Effect. You can choose like how they were, were they an orphan? Were they this and things like that? So like, it's interesting. Like Western RPGs really build out like your own narrative only. Like it's very much focused on that. And also like the stat system is a lot more, I'm so indecisive that it sometimes I have like crippling anxiety of like, do I commit to this? Like, do I want to go this route?
Do I need to look up a guide? Am I building this right? That kind of thing. And then I don't like sometimes with the D&D elements, it's sometimes relying on chance and luck for some of your stat builds.
Oh yeah,
I mean everything is chance, even in JRPGs, but you don't see it as much, and it's not as heavily.
It's not in front of your face.
Not as heavily dependent on it.
Yes.
So and you're playing Baldur's Gate, and you're doing a stat check of some kind, and you roll a literal D20, and it's like, oh man, I got to get higher than a 10. Like, and that may be what would be happening on the back end of a JRPG, but you don't see it, so it doesn't feel as like
But sometimes I don't know, the chances don't seem as harmful or brutal on the JRPG side. Sometimes the chance is more of, do I get a crit hit, which is more helpful than hindering.
It's like you got a 5% chance of critting. Like that's
sometimes
pretty
you
small,
can miss, but that's about it.
Yeah, but you don't think about it, right? You don't think about it.
No.
Yeah. I think that the character creation can be an intimidating thing for people, and that whole process and all the stats. I also think because it's such an expansive world and there's so many stories and things happening in it that can be intimidating. I will say this, and I don't know if this is going to be the case for everybody, but I can say for me, I've only ever really finished one Western RPG. And by finished, I mean like completed the main story. Yeah. That was Fallout 4. I did play all the way through Fallout 4 and finish it. I've never finished any other Skyrim, Fallout 3, New Vegas, any of these like Western developed JRPGs. Hey, I know what we're talking about. Western developed RPGs, never finished, but I don't feel dissatisfied with my time playing them. I don't feel I don't have this, like if I play a JRPG and I don't finish it, I feel a sense of let down or regret or something where it's like, I didn't get the best experience. I'm not happy with how that went.
Yeah. But with Western games,
I didn't see the payoff. And so it didn't feel worth it. Yeah. For Western games, I had so much fun playing Skyrim for the however many hours I put into Skyrim. I don't regret not finishing the main story. I had a great time with the game. Same with Fallout 3, etc. Like they're great. And I didn't need to do everything in order to be satisfied. I stopped playing and I was happy. So I don't know.
Do you ever think of maybe revisiting that file? Is that also like, you feel like it's okay to stop now? Maybe I could get to it later, but it's not a priority.
I don't know if that's ever crossed my mind, but I could see very easily somebody doing that. It's the sort of game where it's like if you stop playing a JRPG for an extended period of time and then you want to go back to it, you're like, what's happening in the story? I don't remember who anybody is or where I'm going or what. With a Western RPG, because they tend to be so much more open, it doesn't feel as intimidating to me to jump back in.
Yeah.
No.
Like I can just jump back in and I'm just going to wander around anyway. And eventually I'll find something to do that'll get me back on the critical path. And that's fine,
Yeah. Something I've noticed too with Western RPGs is sometimes I intentionally don't finish them because I don't want the experience to end.
Yeah.
And I don't feel that satisfaction or, satisfied if there's credits rolling, like, okay, now I mark this off my list. I want to just kind of keep it in there so I could go back to it because I had such a great time with it.
Yeah.
I kind of did that with Witcher 3. I haven't done all the DLC yet. So, but it's there and I know I could revisit it and go back to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's accurate because like I feel like Western RPGs is like the perfect like side game to have with other games in mind. Like let's say if we're playing a JRPG, it's nice to kind of jump in because like let's say with even Oblivion, like once I'm done with Expedition 33, there's other games that I'm going to move on to that are JRPGs that I want to play.
Yeah.
But I'll probably like jump into Oblivion every so often just to kind of play like for a little bit and get, because like they're easy games to jump in and out of, and you can kind of make it like your own little mini adventure every time you play. It doesn't have to be part of the story, like you said. It's like,
exactly,
you could just go on an adventure of your own.
Expedition 33. I'm married to Expedition 33. Oblivion's my side piece. Whatever, it's just my side piece. No, but I get what you mean. I get
Xenoblade Chronicles X is my side piece.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too.
And I feel like that's what gives me like Xenoblade Chronicles X feels like a Western RPG from that perspective, is because like it's the perfect game to pick up and play for an hour or 2 or 3 hours. And then you just like go play a different game and come back and play that. And like, that's what I've been doing with that as well. That's my secondary game. I haven't touched Oblivion since since the first day I played it, but I've been going back, like, especially in the evenings, if I'm sitting down and like, I want to get off the TV for a little bit, I'll just like go handheld mode and play Xenoblade. So that's like a perfect game to jump in and do a bunch of like little missions to keep moving yourself forward and
make a little progress.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think from a Western perspective, is there any like any Western games that you're looking forward to right now? I know Emily's excited for the new Witcher game coming out.
I am, Witcher 4, or whatever they're going to call it.
Yes, I'm excited. That looked really good.
It did, and it'll be fun to see series new game.
Yes, exactly.
But I think the big one's already dropped with, Oblivion Remastered. And then they did Avowed a few months back. What is the other?
Oh, Elder Scrolls 6 needs to come out at some point.
Yeah, Elder Scrolls 6, but I think there's another Obsidian game, right? The something 2.
Yeah, there's...
Outer Worlds 2.
Outer Worlds, yeah, the second one. That's supposed to be coming out later this year too. Like they have so many this year.
Yeah,
I'm surprised. It's back to back.
I know Obsidian's doing lots of stuff.
They're rolling it out.
Yeah, and have you ever played Outer Worlds? The original?
I haven't.
Okay, that's a fun little fun game. It's got like that Obsidian humor that just kind of It's just interesting. It's like playing Fallout, but like more space.
Well, it's from the same creators, right?
Yeah. They did. Yeah, the ones who did New Vegas, which
1,
is
2 in New Vegas.
1, 2 in New Vegas, and they are beloved in terms of like everyone looks fondly at those are the best.
I think if I'm looking forward to one, it might be the inevitable remaster of Fallout 3. I feel like it's probably going to happen. They were similar.
With the success of the show, I don't see why not.
With the show, and then Oblivion was just remastered and was a big deal. They were pretty close to each other in terms of when they were released, as I recall, within a few years, right?
Yeah.
So
the question is, if you played the remastered, are you not going to have a life outside of it again? Or
we'll see. You guys will have to help keep me in line. I don't know.
We'll have to. I'll come over in the middle of the night and like delete your save.
Corrupt it on purpose.
No. That's all right. You did me a favor.
I know. It'll be Emily and I conspiring to
keep me on the straight and narrow.
But yes.
Yeah. Emily more like for moral support. For me for me to do that.
Yes.
Cheering from afar. Yeah.
How about you, Dalla? Anything you want to?
I'm looking forward to Outer Worlds 2. I really enjoyed the first one. Whenever Elder Scrolls 6 comes around, I will be, day one playing that probably. Just because I'm curious to see what that's going to look like when the day does come out. Because like I feel like, you have Oblivion remastered, which is running on like some really like new tech and everything like that. But I have a feeling there's going to be a lot more because of the underlying game is still Oblivion. It's still the same kind of like it's the same story, same everything. So I'm excited to see that stuff. I'm trying to think of. I'm really excited for some more. Like I know Larian is working on some other games that it's going to be bringing. I think they like interviewed recently. Head of Larian interviewed, and they said they have like 2 games that are going to come out at some point soon. I don't know how soon relative soon is, but anything they touch, like I love.
They just released the last patch for Baldur's Gate 3, so
exactly, and they said there's going to be no DLC, no nothing. So they're done with Baldur's Gate 3, and so they already have plans for whatever they're doing next, and I hope they do some more interesting like isometric games as well, because I love like those isometric like games like Divinity, like they did before. Yeah. So if you ever played the Divinity games, those are really good.
I imagine that's what they're working on because they don't have the rights, right, to D&D stuff anymore.
No, I don't think they have the rights anymore. I don't think they wanted to do anymore. I think they were just like,
no, I think that was a one and done
kind of situation. They did everything they wanted to do with that game, and like gladly, because like it's perfect. Like it won.
It's a great game.
It won best, at the Keeleys. Was it the Keeleys that it won?
At the Keeleys.
At the Keeleys. The Jeffreys, as you would say. But yeah, they won, best game of the year that year. So
they did.
I'm excited to see what else they have, ready for us. So it's always nice surprises for there.
Yeah. And I think earlier this year, was it Kingdom Come or something too?
Yes, came out.
That came out, and I think that did pretty well.
Yeah.
Maybe another Western RPG to put on my radar. But
I didn't buy it, but I did wishlist it, and that says something.
That does say something. And I'm excited because, like, I was talking to you guys about it, but I'm building my computer, waiting for all the parts and things that I'll be getting. And so, like, I'm going to be diving maybe a little bit more into some of these games that I've been wanting to play, because I feel like Western RPGs I'm more inclined to play on a computer rather than on like a system.
Sure. So.
Especially when you're playing like isometric games like Baldur's Gate or Divinity and things like that, where like there's a lot of button short keys that you want to play through, and it's just easier to use a mouse and keyboard for all of that.
Makes it so much easier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like,
they do. Yeah. For me, they also feel more at home on PC, and also I don't feel a desire to have the physical game with a Western RPG. Like I'm fine just downloading it on Steam or whatever. So I kind of see that.
I'm excited to dive a little bit more into some of the games that I've been holding out on for a little while. So I'm just excited to build it. So
yeah, and hopefully we'll hear more news of new JRPGs coming out.
Yeah,
because the rest of the year seems rather light outside of the Trails games that we're excited for. Like, what else is coming out?
Really, not. I don't
There's
think
the hush, right?
Yeah,
this might be the start of the downturn. Maybe.
I feel like they're. I feel like they're holding
back.
I think they have their cards like held for this one, because like usually they'll like, I think probably around June they're gonna just drop either Nintendo Directs, or I know like the Xbox showcase is gonna come in June, and
there's some Atlas stuff there.
We'll definitely see something from Atlas,
probably,
and maybe we'll get lucky with some other things. I know like Visions of Mana, I think, was announced on was it on an Xbox or was it PlayStation?
No, that was at the Game Awards.
Oh, was it the Game Awards? Yes,
it was. Yeah,
they did a deep dive on an Xbox like developer showcase. But I feel like we're more inclined to get JRPG news in either Nintendo or Xbox these days, which is weird, but
I know.
so random. But I feel like we'll get some things coming out, but you never know.
You never know. But we'll
Hopefully.
see. But then again, I have so much in my backlog that maybe it's best that they slow down
I
a
wouldn't
bit.
be too sad.
I'm drowning,
I've got plenty.
guys. I'm drowning. I have like, I beat Daybreak 2. There it is. I did it. I finally did it.
You did it.
But in that process, I still need, we still got Xenoblade, still a process. Like Expedition 33. I've yet to play a bunch of other games that are still from last year. So
I had to put Metaphor aside. I started Metaphor and I had to put it aside because Xenoblade X came out, and then I had to put that aside because Clear Obscure came out.
Yep.
So I'm just like layering
I need to
myself.
return to Metaphor too.
I got to get back to it.
I know this year has been a lot of like, I'm going to start this game and then just move on to the next game and never finish. So I need to be better coming out of this. And I feel like a nice downtime of not having too many games release, I'm okay with.
And you need to start your Year of the Atelier.
Year of the Atelier has to begin.
It's true, the Year of Atelier. And
I played my first Atelier game. Well, not first, but first modern.
First modern.
Yes. I have Yumiya too. It's on my shelf and it's waiting for me. It's yelling at me. It's not on my shelf. It's over there. But it is yelling at me because it's still in its wrap. Like it's still sealed and it's
not too long of a game. I think I only spent like 30 something hours on it.
Yeah.
I don't even think I cracked 30. I think I was like upper 20s. So yeah, you can crush it. You can crush it.
I think I'll probably maybe jump into that next alongside Xenoblade. So I need to get into it.
They might seem a little samey for Xenoblade. So
yeah.
That's the only issue.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, I don't want to get into anything too heavy.
It won't.
That might pull me away.
Some of the themes are a little heavy in Yumiya, but more on
less
like
story heavy, but more of like
not so
80, 90 hour heavy.
I see.
Because like
not much of a time commitment.
Xenoblade is already a time commitment to play through that game. Yes. It's so long. There's so many things to do. So
yeah, the thing with Yumiya though, it's very explorative heavy. So it's just on those lines. It's very similar to Xenoblade Chronicles X.
It's true
with no mechs.
But it's got cozy vibes, and cozy vibes are perfect for the summer. So I'm going to be cozy and relax and start my Year of Atelier, which will end up probably being one game, but it'll be the best to
start.
You got to start somewhere.
My Year of Atelier is ending on a whimper.
Yeah.
But anyways.
Anyway, I think we covered a lot, and I just want to say kind of as a closing point about the difference between the two, or arguing about the definitions of whatever. If you find that you are kind of a hard line on JRPG means that it was developed in Japan or developed by Japanese developers, fine. Like, that's okay. You can call stuff whatever you want. I think it's just important that you then further explain the gameplay and the story and the vibes if you're trying to communicate with somebody what kind of game it is.
Yeah.
Just because, for all the reasons we've said, there's so much variety and there's such a broad spectrum of different gameplay styles and even story presentation and character presentation across all these JRPGs and Western RPGs, that if you're just using the ethnicity of the developers as your key descriptor, you're not really saying anything.
Yeah.
So just use some more words then. If you're not comfortable saying JRPG for something that's not Japanese, use some more words to more fully explain what it is you're trying to explain. That would be my advice.
Yeah.
I agree. And I think we've seen, with Clear Obscure Expedition 33 that how global games have become as a medium. Yeah. There's so much influence from all different cultures and, points of where the games were being developed that we've been seeing a lot more mixing of different genres and approaches to games. And it's for the better, I think.
Yeah.
You don't have to pigeonhole, just JRPGs on the island of Japan.
And there are plenty of us
be elsewhere.
Exactly. And there are plenty of us that grew up with JRPGs that are now older and developers. And they're out there taking their experiences and making new experiences based off of things that they love. So like we can't say that it's not a JRPG because to them that's what they're building. That's their thought process. That's their game.
Right.
And if that's how they want to like,
you don't need to deny them that.
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm not, it's not
I'm
my
not
place.
about to crush some young developer's dream.
No,
That's not me. That ain't me.
it's not, Branden. It's not.
It's not us.
And we've seen, how inspiration, stems great work.
Exactly.
Something that we never would have envisioned before, like this French, inspired JRPG. And I'm really excited to see, how this will influence future RPGs in the space.
It's truly a love letter to JRPG. And you never know, like this could be the stepping stone for a lot of, better things. You might see like Square Enix might do a turn-based Final Fantasy again, because they'll realize how much, people are loving these kind of things.
And I hope there's more growth in the AA space.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see.
If a team of 30 people can make something like this in just a few years, good things can happen.
I want
with these
and
big
more of
companies.
this.
Microsoft money obviously developed it, but if Microsoft wants to help fund other great games out there, why not?
Yeah, please, Microsoft, if you're watching this,
Please.
there's a Penny Blood game that needs to be developed, and they need a little bit of love. So send some love that way.
And Arm Fantasia.
And Arm Fantasia while you're at it.
I think they're fine, but if
Are they
you wanna,
okay? I hope so.
Fine,
if you want to throw
Any
money
help.
their way, anyways,
Any
Let's just boost them all up.
Yeah.
Let's boost them all up because I'm worried. I invested in both, and I'm afraid I'm not going to get them.
Yeah.
I hope that they find somebody, but it's these things that there's plenty of people out there that have great ideas and just need a little bit of help. And so, if these big if just AAA studios want to give a little help to these AA's to make things like Expedition 33, then more power to it.
Or, you've got a wide variety of talent. Like I'm thinking like Square Enix in particular, Atlas, these bigger companies, you have all this talent pool that is already employed with you. Make some teams out of these people and have them
Experiment.
work at a budget level similar to Clair Obscur with a team size similar. I bet you'll be able to do some really cool stuff if you experiment.
They need to go back and channel their PS2, PS1 era mentality where they had they had the team doing Final Fantasy VII, but then they had these other teams that were off doing more, economical games or something similar like that. And same thing with the PS2. It's don't put all your eggs in one basket and just diversify the
road down the AAA $billion budget game it doesn't end in a good place. So
you never meet your needs in terms of finances, and that's why Square is always complaining.
I think investing in a good, coordinator who gets things done on time, and also investing in marketing. We don't want them to be buried under things if they do make these games.
Harvestella.
I think it's just really important to change the strategy a little bit now and shift to what works.
Yeah.
Obviously, Expedition 33, I think, is definitely showing that that formula works.
Exactly, and I think it's getting noticed by all the right people. That I think it might. Yeah, I'm excited to see where we go from here. After they've seen something like Expedition 33 become so popular,
maybe it'll take home the Keeley.
I think it would be amazing.
It's a contender.
It is a contender.
It's a contender.
It's probably going to be definitely. I mean, for how
it's going to be nominated.
There's so many people outside of the JRPG space that are just raving about the game, which is telling to how great this game is. There's a lot of people that preface their reviews or preface their discussion on it with I don't like turn-based games. Yeah, exactly. I've heard that so many times on social media and things like that, in the last over the weekend, that are just I'm usually, this is not my style of game, but this game specifically has changed that. So it's incredible to see.
Yeah, and turn-based lives forever. It doesn't die.
I'm going to get that.
Amen.
We're going to get a t-shirt for that. It's going to be the podcast t-shirt. JRPGs live forever. They never die. It's basically like Goonies never die, but just JRPGs.
You have to imagine as the Goonies have gotten older, that's got to be a much harder thing for them to keep saying, Yeah. I don't know. When you hit 40, it's I don't know. Actually, things aren't looking good. Long term, things aren't looking good anymore.
Things aren't looking good anymore, guys.
Anyway.
On that note.
On that morbid note.
I hope everyone enjoyed our rants and raves about Expedition 33 and Western RPGs and just JRPGs in general. And I don't know if there's
Let us
anything.
know, like what games you guys are playing, where it falls on the spectrum of JRPGs versus Western RPGs, and if you're playing Claire Obscure Expedition 33 and loving it too. We'll love to hear.
I would also
Yes.
love to hear what your first Western RPG was too. So feel free to add that in the comments. We'll be taking a look.
Please and thank you.
Thank you.
And also, as always,
Yes.
thank you to our members. You guys are incredible. Thank you so much for supporting the show and joining the Discord and all the stuff that you do. You just are fantastic.
Yes.
If you want to join, please consider it. We would greatly appreciate it. You get, if you're at the Pursuer level, you get 4 bonus episodes every month, which is cool, I think, right?
We're about to
Including today's, which will
including
be...
today's, where we're going to play Expedition 33 a little bit and have some fun.
I'll be playing it. So
talking about it. Yep.
I might cry. So we'll see.
I might
I might cry.
I might have
Also.
a single tear.
If you guys cry, I might cry just because you're crying. I might just feel the empathy,
we're all crying here. So like
we're all just sobbing.
Oh,
Yeah.
Waterworks.
So if you want to see that,
Beautiful game. Yeah. Anyway.
anyways, on that note,
Thanks, everybody.
thanks everybody. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.